Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to GamerMasala. So today I'm gonna answer a question that you thought you would never ask. Can each and every Meliodas in-game solo demonic beast Gloom? So demonic beast Gloom was released in this update, and while it's pretty easy to take this boss down by using just a bunch of AoEs, I decided to take a slightly different approach. The first one to look at is Blue Demon Meli. So Blue Demon Meli is a pretty solid unit and he has a Pierce AoE, which is extremely beneficial with this boss. If you attack him thrice and Demon Meli has a lifesteal of 13%, he's gonna steal quite a bit of life back unless he gets hit with that infect from the left side boss. The other move is Corrosion, and while you can't really make use of Demon Meli's Corrosion, mostly because the 2 out of the 3 bosses have debuff cancel and they'll pretty much remove it, the one on the right doesn't quite lose a lot of HP even if you have a gold Corrosion. So your best bet here is to just attack with your Pierce guards. Alright, so turn 1, I used a Pierce guard because he's gonna deal quite a bit of damage with that Pierce, and he doesn't have a Pierce rolls, he instead has attack rolls, and this is my attack and crit damage set, so I'm hoping that he lands a lot of crits. And the Pierce merges make it extremely lucky as well. So there's a Corrosion card in the front which is stopping me from getting a Pierce merge, but I did realize that even with a gold one it's not actually that reliable, so instead I decided to go for a silver to use a silver instead and hope to get more Pierce cards, and obviously I didn't. So that was a pretty crappy draw there, but the good thing is that we at least have one Pierce card, and I just used that Pierce card because that's literally everything I can do. The boss on the right puts up his Solidify, so if you do use Corrosion and he does Solidify, you're gonna give him an extra 60% resistance, and that's gonna make it even harder to kill. So this is where Blue Demon Meli almost died, but then he still has Tarmiel's Grace trying to keep him alive. So the only thing that I could do here was use my ultimate, because if I did use the Pierce card, I would get hit with the counter and then he would die right away. It's about 60k damage that you get hit with a counter. So my best bet again is to use that one Pierce card I have and those crappy Corrosion cards that basically make no sense. But at least the boss on the left goes down with this one, and that was insanely lucky for me because I had such a hard time with that boss. And then here of course I get more Corrosion cards, so I have one Pierce card that I can use, and the boss, if you remember, he has that HP heal, so he's gonna go back, he's gonna recover 20% of his diminished HP there. And the only thing that is pretty much left at this point is the ultimate, which I'm glad took him down because it really took me so many tries to get through this with Blue Demon Meli. It's just insane. And yeah, that was it. That was the toughest one. The other Meliodasses were also kind of tough, but not as bad as Blue Demon Meli. Alright, so going into SR Meliodas. SR Meliodas already has a giant advantage. He has a full counter. Alright, so my strategy here was gonna be pretty simple. Just use a counter, as many counters as I could, especially because there is no point in using that weak point. SR Meliodas doesn't have a debuff of his own, so even if he does get a bunch of weak point cards, they're not gonna deal too much damage. He actually gets quite a bit of damage done with his counters though. Even at a bronze, he can actually deal a significant chunk of damage. So turn 1, I'm just gonna use a counter, and he's gonna retaliate with a bunch of HP. So with that silver counter, he can actually deal about 110k to that boss, to either of those bosses. And then here of course I get a merge on a weak point, which is obviously unnecessary for me. And then yeah, he counters back and then gets rid of that boss on the right in just one turn. Alright, so I put up another counter, so just so we can keep that streak going, and then he counters back, but instead it doesn't do a lot of damage. So even though he doesn't quite have a type disadvantage or advantage against this enemy, he does have pretty good defense, I guess, because my attack wasn't doing much, my counter wasn't doing much for him. But then I did land that ultimate hit, I did land that critical hit and then got him down. So SR Meliodas, it did take me quite a few tries, but yeah. So this turn I basically had one counter card that I needed to save because there was no point using a counter, and the boss wasn't gonna hit me twice. I had to use a weak point, which did inflict some damage back on me, and then the boss uses his ultimate. So I'm basically in the last a tenth of my HP left, and then I used another weak point just to get as much health as I could back. And then Meliodas is literally just hanging by a thread there, and with a bleed, He doesn't have Timel's Grace in this one because I did use lifesteal food for this. I was kind of trying to stay away from using Timel Link, but here I put up a counter and I got a little bit more HP back, and then that ultimate just did it for me because that was 118k damage, and I'm pretty sure that was just about the HP that he had. So my point about not using the Archangel Grace earlier, about Daniel's Grace, so I was trying to not use it just because I figured I would try and see if I can use other links instead, but I actually did them in a different order than I have them in this video. But yeah, I realized that Timel's Grace is needed. It's one of the things that can really help with Blue Demon Meli especially. Alright, so next up is Green Meliodas. So for Green Meliodas, I actually decided to use my HP defense gear instead of using my attack crit. He actually doesn't quite benefit much from attack. He can attack, sure, but his counters are what you really need to rely on. So I kind of use HP food as well, just so he has that extra boost of HP. So this actually didn't take me that many tries. This was pretty straightforward, and this could have been much easier if my Meliodas was super awakened or level 90, but I didn't care to put too many resources into this unit, mostly because I don't quite use it. So the first turn I actually went on an attack because I could save up a silver counter. So obviously quite a bit is dependent on RNG because you do need to get a bunch of counters so you can deal a lot of damage back. A lot of Meliodas' damage just comes from his counters, especially when his HP is diminished. So I didn't use lifesteal food here. I did want him to go at a much lower HP. And then at this turn I put up a silver counter because I knew he had enough potential to deal a bunch of damage back. And then he's also filling up his ult cage there, which is incredibly lucky for me with those counter merges. And then with that silver counter, he just takes him completely down with 150k attack, then 150k damage, which is kind of crazy because this was the boss that he had a type disadvantage against, and it is pretty lucky for me that he got down on that one. And then I just put up like another counter and then made a bunch of space for new cards. So this one he takes him out with 259k. So this was actually a pretty lucky run for me because I did get those counter merges. The single target cards, even though they are pure attack, they don't really deal that much damage. And then this is the best part about his ultimate. He can actually cancel stances. So he got rid of his stance and his debuff immunity. But then I get hit with that ultimate back, and now Counter Meliodas is at 10% of his HP. So it's the best thing to do again is to just save that counter until later and then use a single target move. So that dealt about 65k damage, which is really not that much. But as long as he doesn't attack me next turn, I would be good. And he went for a stance instead. So I obviously can't attack this turn, so I just have to go for the merges and then save up a silver counter for the turn when he does attack. Alright, so next turn he is going to attack. And well, the only thing I can really do at this point is just put up that silver counter I have and then hope that it kills. The boss does have taunt, but he doesn't have a damage reduction on taunt, which is pretty good for me. And then he does take him out with a 250k hit. So Counter Meliodas actually works really well for this group. His counters are pretty overpowered, and the fact that he's not super awakened actually does help him because he doesn't have that extra crit resistance or extra defense, and his HP falls quite significantly, so he can deal a lot of damage back. And then we come to Lost Wind Meliodas, and Lost Wind Meliodas is as simple as Assault Mode Meliodas, and this is pretty much a no-brainer. I just had crit damage and attack gear on, and then just went for it. So all of these bosses are pretty much crit on Lost Wind Meliodas, and he does gain a bunch of gold, silver, single targets or his charge AoEs. And yeah, the rest of the battle is pretty much Lost Wind Meliodas using all of his gold attacks. So these bosses don't actually pose any problem to Lost Wind Meliodas or Assault Mode Meliodas because these are new festival units, and the old units have been pretty much power creeped and have not been buffed in a really long time. Their kits are also not that great, and so I figured why not give them a try, and this actually works. So tomorrow I'm actually gonna be trying a Red Meliodas, and that one's a tricky one because Red Meliodas has the same ultimate as the blue one, which is weak point, and that's a tough one to work with. Alright, so next up is AM Meli, and he's pretty straightforward. You always go second with that combat class, and you get that basic stat increase at the very beginning. So for this fight, I actually decided not to use any amplify cards and just go for the rupture ones. The middle boss has that debuff immunity, which is a buff, and then Meliodas is just gonna deal a bunch of damage there. And then they're also getting a defense related stat decrease with every time they attack. And yeah, the battle is pretty much straightforward, so I'm just gonna speed through this one. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well, and don't forget to share with the rest of the community. And if you want to give this challenge a try, then definitely go for it and let me know in the comments if it worked out for you. Alright guys, thanks for watching and stay safe.